They said I was part of the Burger Stack family. Until the day I cost too much point 12 years of loyalty, gone with a single sentence, "We can hire 2 kids for what we pay you." So they fired me point 2 weeks before Christmas. No severance. No thank you, just a lie about me being lazy and not a team player. They thought I would go quietly. They were wrong. My name is Emily Rios. I am 38 years old, a single mom, full-time worker, and part-time believer that hard work should mean something. For the last 12 years, I've given my soul to a job that was never supposed to be permanent. I started at Burger Stack when my daughter, Maddie, was still in diapers. It was supposed to be temporary, a stopgap between figuring things out and finding something better. But life doesn't always give you clean transitions. Maddie's father left before her 2nd birthday, left a note and a pile of unpaid bills. After that, I didn't have the luxury of figuring anything out. I just needed steady work, food on the table, and a daycare that wouldn't charge more than my rent. Burger Stack became my anchor. I learned every inch of that place like it was my second home. Because for a while, it was that I knew when the fryer hissed wrong, which meant it needed to be drained. I could hear a shake machine struggling from the front counter. I learned that if you wrapped a damp paper towel around the ice cream nozzles at night, you wouldn't spend 20 minutes chipping off frozen clumps the next morning. The teenagers they hired came and went like fireflies, bright for a moment, then gone without notice. But I stayed. When someone called in sick during dinner rush, it was always, "Emily, can you cover?" When the new kid forgot to clean the grill and the health inspector showed up the next morning, it was, "Emily, can you fix this?" I never said no. Not once. I didn't have the option to. I trained Rick's nephews when they got hired over better qualified applicants. I worked through migraines. I mopped the floors when the janitor ghosted. I skipped breaks when the drive-through line curled into the street. And when Rick's wife showed up unannounced for free milkshakes and attitude, I smiled and told her it was on the house. I did it all because I believed that loyalty meant something, that eventually someone would notice I wasn't just another name on the schedule. I was the glue holding that place together. But if Rick noticed, he never said so. He called me kiddo, even though I was old enough to know when I was being taken advantage of. He once handed me a $10 Starbucks card as a thank you for working 14 days straight to cover summer gaps. "Don't spend it all in one place." He laughed. I did. I bought a single latte and a muffin, and then I went back to flipping burgers. When new hires came in asking for $15 an hour, more than I made after 12 years, Rick said, "You're too good at what you do. I can't afford to promote you." Translation, I can't afford to lose you doing the hard stuff while I sit in the back office pretending to order supplies. It wasn't just about food service. It was emotional labor. I knew which customers had dietary allergies, which ones were widowed and just needed to talk. I noticed when Mrs. Thompson from the church group looked paler than usual and asked if she needed help getting to her car. I made small talk with teenagers crying in the bathroom after school bullying. I kept Band-Aids behind the counter and carried pepper spray after that one closing shift when a drunk guy wouldn't take no for an answer. And one trained me for those things that I trained myself because I thought I mattered their point one Sunday night. After closing, I stayed late to mop the kitchen because Rick's cousin had left halfway through his shift. I was halfway through scrubbing behind the soda machine when Rick walked in, saw me drenched in mop water, and said, "Don't forget to clock out first. We're running high on labor hours." That should have been my sign, but I brushed it off like always that I needed this job. Not for the paycheck. I could have scraped together tips elsewhere, but for the stability, for the structure it gave my daughter's life, for the insurance plan that covered her asthma inhalers, for the schedule I had memorized, so well I could pick Maddie up from school without ever needing a printed copy, every birthday party, every PTA meeting, every last-minute school recital. I juggled them around my shifts. I told Maddie I'd always be there. That mattered more than anything. One afternoon, while she was coloring at the kitchen table, she said, "Mama, are you the boss at your job?" I smiled. "Not exactly, but you're the best one, right?" I wanted to believe that meant something, that being the best meant being valued. It happened on a Tuesday. I remember because it was the only day that week Maddie didn't have after-school practice. She was looking forward to watching our favorite baking show together. I had even promised to bring home a milkshake from the special machine. We only cleaned once a week, Tuesdays. The shift started like any other. We were short-staffed again. One of the new hires, Trevor or Tyler, something with a T, called out last minute, said his grandma died. It was the third grandma he'd lost in 6 weeks. So I stepped in, ran the fry station, covered drive-through, helped fix the touchscreen that was acting up again. Rick spent the morning in his office pretending to handle inventory, while really just watching football on his phone. I knew because I brought him lunch once and saw the screen that he never even looked embarrassed. At 1:47 p.m., the lunch rush was finally slowing when Rick stepped out of the back room. He waved me over with 2 fingers and said, "Hey, got a minute?" I wiped my hands on a towel and followed him. The office was a converted dry storage closet with a folding chair and a dusty desktop computer from 2009. The only decoration was a faded poster that said, "Teamwork makes the dream work," which was ironic considering Rick hadn't worked a full shift in years. He shut the door behind us, sighing like this was going to be hard for him. "So, listen, I appreciate everything you do, right?" My stomach dropped. That sentence never leads anywhere good. We've been getting pressure from corporate about labor costs. They've been cracking down hard. Franchise owners are being told to trim fat wherever possible. Trim, F-A-T. IT was such a sterile phrase. Clinical, like I was part of some spreadsheet column he could delete with a keystroke. I didn't say anything. I just waited. Rick continued, "You've been here a long time, and you're great at what you do. But I did the math, and honestly, I can hire 2 high schoolers for what I'm paying you." He leaned back like that was the end of the conversation, like I should understand. "Wait," I said, blinking. Are you firing me?" He nodded like I had just guessed the right number in a game show. "It's not personal, It's business. No hard feelings, right?" No hard feelings. I had just spent the last 12 years keeping his business afloat, and he was letting me go like I was a bag of expired lettuce that I swallowed, trying to keep my voice steady. "There's no severance? We're not legally required to offer that. Plus, corporate's being strict. You know how it is." "A reference." He scratched his chin. "Let's just say we'll keep things neutral. Sometimes when people leave under these circumstances, it's best not to say too much either way." That was when I realized what he was doing, that he wasn't just firing me. He was setting me up to fail. I had no safety net, no backup, and in the middle of the holiday season, no one was hiring anyone over the age of 22 unless you had a college degree and 0 opinions about wage fairness. "Rick, it's 2 weeks before Christmas." He looked genuinely surprised. "Oh, yeah, that's rough. Maybe this'll give you more time with Maddie. Though, silver lining, right?" Silver lining. I was still staring at him when he handed me a white envelope with my final paycheck. "No bonus. No farewell. HR says we can't let terminated employees finish their shift." He added, "Liability issues." And just like that, I was walked out the door. No goodbye from the crew. No chance to collect my things from the break room cubby. Just a laminated "Happy Holidays" poster waving at me as I crossed the parking lot. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before I could start the engine. 12 years. Gone. I didn't cry until I pulled into my driveway. Not loud sobs. Just that quiet, trembling kind of crying you do when your world falls apart and you don't want to scare your kid, Maddie met me at the door in her cozy socks and asked, "Where's the milkshake?" I lied and said the machine was broken. Again, later that night, while I was folding laundry, I got a text from Rosa, one of the shift leads I had trained 2 years ago. "I'm so sorry, Rick said you were getting lazy. Said you weren't being a team player anymore." I stared at my screen. Lazy? Not a team player. I had mopped floors on my knees when we ran out of pads. I had covered his wife's cousin's double shift when she showed up drunk. I had worked New Year's Eve 3 years in a row without complaining. And now I was lazy. That's when something shifted in me. That IT wasn't just that I lost my job, that IT was the lie, the insult, the audacity of it all, that I didn't want revenge. Not yet. I didn't have the energy, but I did want truth. And I knew deep down that the truth had a way of finding its moment, even if it took time, especially when someone like Rick was running out of lies. The first few weeks after I got fired felt like walking through fog. Every morning, I'd still wake up at 5:30 a.m., muscle memory sending me into autopilot, pack Maddie's lunch, drink bad coffee, check my burger stack schedule that no longer existed. Then I'd remember, and the weight would drop back onto my chest like a crate of frozen patties that I scrambled for work, applying to anything within bus distance. Fast food, convenience stores, even seasonal retail. Most didn't call back. The ones that did offered $9 an hour and wanted me to work split shifts with no benefits. Finally, the Pineview Diner hired me as a part-time server. It wasn't glamorous, but it was work. Tips helped. The owner, Doreen, didn't look down on me. In fact, when I told her I had worked at Burger Stack for 12 years, she said, 12 years in food service without punching someone? That's a damn degree. The uniform was 3 sizes too big and smelled like stale syrup, no matter how many times I washed it. But the people were kind. I was allowed to eat off the clock. And best of all, I was treated like a human being. Meanwhile, Rick's little kingdom began to collapse. Quietly at first, at the diner, I started hearing whispers. Not from my coworkers. No one there cared about Burger Stack, but from the customers. Pineview wasn't far from my old store. We shared a lot of the same regulars. They started coming in more frequently. Mrs. Keller, who used to order a bacon cheeseburger with no tomato every Wednesday at Burger Stack, stopped showing up there completely. One day, I saw her at Pineview. Emily? Oh, thank goodness. Someone who knows how to take an order. She sighed. Burger Stack's gone straight to hell. I raised an eyebrow as I poured her coffee. Really? Last time I was there, they gave me raw fries. Raw. I asked to speak to the manager, and it was some kid with braces who looked terrified to be alive. Others followed. Parents complained the play area had mold on the walls. Drive-through orders were constantly wrong. One woman said she found a toothpick in her milkshake. A toothpick. The regulars didn't just stop going, they swore it off entirely. And the reviews? Well, I checked the store's Google listing one night while Maddie did her math homework beside me. Just 3 months ago, it had been 4.2 stars. Now, 2.8, that number hit harder than I expected. Like a silent validation of everything I had done right and everything Rick had let fall apart, that I scrolled through the reviews. Cold food. Long wait. Manager yelling at staff in front of customers. I missed the woman who used to run the register. She actually cared. This new crew? Clueless. Used to come here every weekend. Never again. My daughter cried after the teenage cook told her to chill when her order was missing nuggets. I didn't comment. Didn't like anything. But I read every single one. And I smiled. Not out of spite. Not really. More like recognition. A quiet acknowledgement from the universe that I wasn't crazy, that all those years of holding things together actually meant something, that Rick had never run that place. I had. Now that I was gone, The cracks were turning into canyons. One afternoon, a man named James, regular at both the diner and the burger stack, pulled me aside as I refilled his sweet tea. "I'll tell you what," he said, leaning in like he was sharing a conspiracy. "Since you left, that place is circling the drain." "You noticed too?" I asked. "Oh yeah, they had some teenager trying to fix the register while chewing gum and yelling at his girlfriend over the phone. Drive-through took 18 minutes. 18. That's not fast food, that's slow agony." He sipped his tea and added, "You were the glue, Emily. We all knew it. Rick just figured it out too late." That sentence stuck with me the rest of the week. You were the glue. I'd spent so many years just doing what needed to be done, never expecting credit, never demanding attention, just showing up, staying late, cleaning the messes no one else noticed. IT had always felt invisible, but maybe it wasn't. Not to the people who mattered. Rick's new hires didn't last. One quit mid-shift because he didn't vibe with cleaning grease traps. Another didn't show up after her second day. Just texted, "This job is toxic," and ghosted. Turnover soared. One of my old coworkers, Tina, who worked fries during weekends, DM'd me on Facebook out of nowhere. "Hey, you were right. It's hell in there without you. The kids are scared of Rick. He's yelling all the time now. Drive-through timer is always in the red. He threatened to dock our pay for talking back. It's bad, Emily." I didn't respond, but I took a screenshot and saved it. Just in case. The best moment came on a slow Thursday morning at Pineview. A woman walked in wearing a stiff burger stack polo and ordered coffee with 2 sugars. I recognized her instantly. Melissa, one of the area managers from corporate. She used to pop in for surprise inspections. She didn't recognize me at first. I was out of uniform. My hair was in a braid. The lighting at the diner wasn't fluorescent and soul-sucking like the store, but halfway through her scrambled eggs, she looked up, squinted, and said, "Emily?" I nodded. "That's me." "Wow, I didn't expect to see you here." "Guess we both had surprises," I said, smiling without warmth. "I heard what happened. Rick said you weren't a team player anymore." That stung. Even after everything, I raised an eyebrow. "Is that what he's saying?" She shrugged, clearly uncomfortable. "Well, the store's in rough shape. Numbers are tanking. Customer satisfaction's down 40%. We've had to offer free meals to keep some reviews from going viral." She leaned in slightly. "Between you and me, I think HQ's watching him closely." That caught my attention. Oh, let's just say the higher-ups aren't thrilled. They're starting to ask why a previously high-performing store fell apart within weeks of letting go of their longest-serving employee. I didn't say anything. I just nodded, topped off her coffee, and walked back to the counter. Later, as I rolled silverware beside Doreen, I couldn't help but think. Rick thought he fired dead weight. Instead, he pulled the pin from a grenade. And the fallout, it was just beginning. The call came on a Wednesday morning just after Maddie left for school. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a lukewarm cup of coffee, still wearing my Pineview apron from the night shift. My feet were sore, my knees aching, and my phone was almost dead from running the calculator app the night before, trying to figure out how to afford both groceries and rent by the 5th. Then the screen lit up with a number I didn't recognize, Seattle area code. I almost ignored it. Probably a spam call. Or a collections agency asking for Ms. Emily Rios with a tone that made my stomach drop, but something made me swipe answer. "Hello?" A pause. Then a calm, professional voice. "Hi, is this Emily Rios?" Speaking. "Emily, my name is Marissa Nguyen. I'm a regional operations manager with Burger Stack Corporate. Do you have a moment to talk?" That name made my stomach clench. Corporate? Why now? Sure. Yeah, I've got a moment. She didn't waste time. "I'm reaching out because we've noticed a significant performance decline at the Southgate location over the past 3 months. Increase in customer complaints, unusually high staff turnover, a sharp drop in health inspection scores, and, well, I'll be honest, some troubling reviews from both customers and current employees." I stayed quiet. Your name has come up repeatedly during internal interviews. From who? I'm not at liberty to say, but several people mentioned you as someone who might understand what's going wrong. I could hear it in her voice. This wasn't just a check-the-box phone call. She had been sent by someone higher up, someone watching numbers fall faster than profits could rise. Rick said I was the problem. I said, finally, a pause. Yes, we've heard that perspective. And now you want mine. If you're willing, it would be strictly confidential. Nothing you say will be shared with franchise ownership. We're just looking to understand the situation better. Off the record, if you prefer. I hesitated. For weeks, I had been sitting on everything I knew, silent, bruised pride keeping me from stirring the pot. But now they were asking. Now they wanted truth. And suddenly I realized I wasn't angry anymore, that I was ready. I'll talk, I said, but not on the phone. You want answers? We meet face to face. We met the next morning at a local cafe, near the bus depot, neutral ground. I wore my Pineview uniform, grease stains and all, not to prove anything, but because I couldn't afford to be late to my shift. Marissa was in her mid-30s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. She had the kind of look that let you know she didn't waste her time on half-truths. Thank you for meeting me, she said, sliding a legal pad and a digital recorder across the table. I won't take more than 20 minutes of your time. I sipped my coffee. You might want more than 20. And then I told her everything. Not the bitter version, not the victim version, the truth about how Rick told teenage employees to clock out before mandatory cleanup so he could fudge the labor hours, about how he hid expired patties in the back freezer and instructed staff to relabel them with new stickers, about the night he forced a 17-year-old to work a double shift past midnight, then threatened her job when she said her mom was going to report it, about how Rick would scream during rush hour, not to get things moving, but because it made him feel powerful, about how health inspections were a coordinated performance, clean uniforms, special instructions, even changed menu procedures. Just for that day, Marissa didn't interrupt. She just nodded, wrote notes, and occasionally asked for clarification. Were you ever told to falsify timesheets? Yes, multiple times. I refused, but others didn't. Did Rick ever retaliate when you pushed back? He didn't have to. He just cut your hours until you got the message. I could see it in her eyes. This wasn't the first story like mine she'd heard. But I also knew something was different here, because Rick's store had been a top-performing location 6 months ago, and now it was a sinking ship. Emily, she said finally, would you be willing to submit a written statement? I thought this was off the record. It was, until now. But if this becomes part of a larger investigation, and I believe it will, we may need testimony. We would redact your name unless you explicitly give consent. I looked out the cafe window. A city bus pulled to a stop across the street. People shuffled out, clutching coffee cups and backpacks. A man with paint on his jeans held the door for an older woman carrying groceries. Everyone just trying to survive. Just like me, if I testify, I said, what happens to Rick? That depends. If corporate finds violations of labor law, franchise ethics, or food safety standards, they can terminate his contract, pull the franchise, sue for damages. It's rare, but not unheard of. And if I don't, then he keeps getting away with it. And someone else, maybe another single mom, ends up exactly where you were 3 weeks ago. That landed hard. I nodded slowly. Then yes, I'll testify. I'll write the statement. She gave me a small but genuine smile. Thank you, Emily. As she packed up, I asked one more thing. Why me? She paused, then said, because when things fell apart, your name came up again and again, not as the problem, but as the person holding it all together. She left the cafe and walked briskly toward her rental cart. I sat there for another 5 minutes, staring into my coffee. For the first time since getting fired, I didn't feel discarded. I felt necessary. The ripple had begun. And Rick, He had no idea the water was about to rise, that IT took less than a week after our meeting for things to start shifting. At first, it was subtle. A whisper behind the counter, a glance exchanged between employees at Burger Stack, and the delivery guy. Rumors floating around the fryer grease like oil bubbles waiting to pop. But I knew the gears were turning. Marissa hadn't wasted time. She had called me that evening to confirm she had received my written statement and submitted it to corporate's compliance division. I expected it to be another one of those, "Thanks, we'll keep this on file," moments that IT wasn't up by Monday, the investigation had already begun, that I didn't know all the details at first, but I knew enough people in town, old coworkers, former regulars, even Maddie's classmate's mom. She was dating one of the new hires at Burger Stack. It didn't take long for stories to find their way back to me. That Tuesday night, as I was rolling silverware at Pineview and humming along to the tinny jukebox in the corner, Doreen came over, eyes wide, half whispering like we were in some courtroom drama. "You hear the latest?" I raised an eyebrow. What, more half-cooked chicken or another fry basket fire? She shook her head, grinning. "Someone from corporate showed up today at Burger Stack. Unannounced. Didn't even tell Rick they were coming. Walked right into the kitchen during prep." My stomach flipped. Seriously? Dead serious. Health inspection clipboard. One of those big cameras clipped to her lapel. Said she was auditing for brand quality assurance. That wasn't just an inspection. That was an ambush. And it was only the beginning. The next day, my inbox lit up with a Facebook message from Tina, the fry girl who had once trained under me during her junior year. You won't believe it. Inspectors were there again. 2 days in a row. Rick was losing his mind. He screamed at Ethan in front of everyone because he didn't remember the talking points for the walkthrough. It was brutal. I could picture it like a movie in my head. Rick turning red, sweat beading along his balding scalp, voice rising like a teapot just before it whistles. He had no idea how to handle pressure, only how to bark louder when things slipped out of his grip. They even asked about your termination. Tina added, said they're reassessing internal staffing decisions. You think they're looking to reverse it? I didn't answer because I didn't want it reversed, that I didn't want to go back, that I wanted the truth to be louder than Rick's lies. Over the next few days, the floodgates didn't just open. They crashed down like a dam had burst. Employees started quitting mid-shift, walking out in groups of 2 and 3. One girl, Sarah, a college freshman who worked part-time on weekends, posted a TikTok that went semi-viral in our small town. POV, you thought fast food was flipping burgers, but your boss is screaming at you for not hiding the expired patties fast enough when corporate walks in #BurgerBurn, #quitting today. Within hours, dozens of people were sharing similar stories in the comments. OMG, same at the one in Southgate. My friend got yelled at for telling the truth during an audit. They made my little sister clean toilets without gloves. Literally saw them throw out the thermometer during inspection day, so they didn't have to record the fridge temp. I just watched, read, screenshot everything, that I wasn't out for blood, but if someone else wanted to swing the sword, I wasn't about to stop them. The customers joined in next, photos surfaced on Google, and Yelp got a half-cooked chicken sandwich with the caption, I used to love this place. Not anymore. A tray of fries soaked in what looked like dishwater with the caption, tasted like cleaning solution. Manager refused refund. Never again. One customer uploaded a video showing Rick behind the counter yelling at a crying teenage employee, saying, you want to cry? Cry at home. This isn't therapy. The video got picked up by a local Facebook watchdog group. That's when things escalated. The comments came fast and brutal. This man shouldn't be near kids, let alone managing them. Imagine yelling at a 16-year-old for your own failure. Disgusting. Where's corporate when this is happening? I knew exactly where corporate was. They were watching, documenting, building a case. On Friday, I got another call from Marissa. Emily, she said, calm but sharp. I wanted to thank you. Your testimony helped connect the dots. We've now received over a dozen corroborating statements from former and current employees. Glad I could help, I said simply. She paused. I also want to prepare you. Rick knows something's happening. He's angry. He may try to reach out. I laughed bitterly. What's he going to say? That I broke the deep fryer. Just be careful. He's the kind of person who strikes out when he loses control. He already did. I said, that's why I'm not working there anymore. She hesitated again. You may also be asked to appear in person for a performance review hearing. If we move forward with revoking his franchise agreement, you'd be a key witness. I didn't even need to think. I'll be there. That night, I closed up the diner and walked home instead of taking the bus. IT was a quiet, cold evening, the kind where your breath fogs the air and every porch smells faintly of chimney smoke. I passed by a small corner lot and saw kids building snow people while their moms sipped hot chocolate on the porch. Maddie would love that. I reached into my coat and found a crumpled drawing she had made, a cartoon version of me flipping burgers with a big smile on my face. Below it, she had written in purple crayon, "Best mommy cook ever." My throat tightened, not because of the drawing, but because she still thought that job made me proud. And for so long, it did. Now I wanted her to see something better. I wanted her to see her mom as someone who stood up, spoke out, and refused to be silent in the face of corruption. When I got home, I pulled up the Burger Stack website. Under franchisee spotlight, Rick's name had disappeared. Its place was a bland placeholder. Southgate location, performance review pending. I clicked away. Why work wasn't finished, but the flood had come, and Rick was already underwater. If the floodgates opened last week, this week was the tsunami. Burger Stack Southgate was no longer just a bad franchise. It was a case study in collapse. Customers were boycotting, teenagers were quitting in droves, and inspectors were practically living in the back kitchen. Still, Rick tried to act like nothing was happening. From what I heard, he doubled down on control. More yelling, more threats, more desperate attempts to patch a sinking ship with duct tape and denial. But corporate wasn't buying it. The investigation had officially moved past quiet coffee shop conversations and anonymous messages. It was now in full swing, with clipboards, cameras, policy reviews, and auditors that asked the kind of questions no one wanted to answer. I kept my distance. I had already spoken. I had submitted my statement. I had told the truth. Now I just watched the storm from a safe distance and fielded messages from the ones still caught in at point. One of the first came from Ethan, a kid I had trained on grill the year before. He was 19 now, trying to save up for community college. Emily, inspectors came again. Rick tried to shut them out at first. Then he called his cousin to pretend she was a manager and answer all the questions. I blinked. Did it work? Nope. The inspector recognized her from Instagram. Said, "Interesting, because your cousin's account says she's an eyelash technician." He turned red and told her to leave. I burst out laughing, but it wasn't funny, not really. Rick wasn't just cutting corners. He was making a mockery of everyone who worked under him. And now, finally, someone higher up was paying attention. Over the next few days, the audit intensified. Mystery shoppers flooded the location, armed with checklists and cameras tucked into buttons. One ordered a kid's meal and waited 27 minutes to receive a cold burger, soggy fries, and no toy. Another asked about allergens and was told, "I don't know, probably fine." She reported it. Corporate flagged it immediately. Then came the labor interviews. Every current and former employee who had worked there in the last 12 months was emailed a request to schedule a private interview with the compliance team. A few were scared at first, worried about retaliation, legal consequences, losing reference letters, but someone started a group chat. A fry cook named Maya added me one night while I was folding laundry. "We heard you spoke up first." "That true?" "I guess so," I replied. "Respect." Rick told everyone you got fired for stealing supplies. I choked on my water. What? Yeah, like trash bags and soda syrup or something. The story changes. I didn't respond right away. I was so tired of lies twisting in the air like smoke. But I had to admit, it didn't matter. Not anymore, because now the truth had weight, and Rick was about to feel every pound of it. The messages kept coming. My phone buzzed so much I had to mute it. 2 new hires quit mid-shift. Said Rick called one of them stupid in front of a full lobby. Someone from OSHA showed up, asking about the chemical storage. A customer found mold in the ketchup pump. Took photos. It's all over Facebook. Rick's freaking out. He thinks someone's feeding info to corporate. He started checking backpacks before we clock out. It was unraveling faster than even I expected. And then one afternoon I got a call from Doreen. Hey, Emily, you free next Friday? I think so. Why? You might want to dress up a bit. Someone from corporate called here for a reference. They asked about your schedule. Sounded very formal. A reference for what? They didn't say, but my guess? You're about to be asked to walk back into Burger Stack. Only this time, through the front door of headquarters. Sure enough, the email came later that day from Marissa. Subject, Southgate performance hearing, witness participation request inside. A formal request to appear as a primary witness in a regional performance review for franchise holder Rick Holloway. My written testimony had helped open the investigation. They now needed in-person corroboration. Your experience, tenure, and specific examples of violations will be invaluable to the review board. If you're willing to participate, travel expenses will be covered, and your role will remain protected under corporate confidentiality policy. I read the email 3 times. Then I called my mom to ask if she could watch Maddie for a night. She said yes, and for the first time in months, her voice didn't sound worried about me that I didn't tell anyone at the diner what the hearing was about. But I showed up to work the next day in slacks and a collared shirt instead of my uniform. Doreen winked. Get him. Maddie gave me a hug that morning. Are you going to your new job, Mama? I smiled and kissed the top of her head. Not quite, but I'm going to fix something that should have been fixed a long time ago. The following Friday, I stepped into the corporate boardroom. That IT was nothing like the greasy back office Rick used to call his command center. This place was glass, polished metal, filtered air, and bright lights that left nowhere to hide. Rick was already there, sitting stiff in a gray suit that didn't quite fit. His hair looked thinner. His eyes darted like someone waiting for a trap to spring. Marissa greeted me with a soft nod and gestured to a seat. The review board sat across a long conference table. 5 people, 3 laptops, 2 folders thick with paper. One of them slid a document across the table toward Rick. Mr. Holloway, we've reviewed over 40 individual reports of misconduct, including, but not limited to, labor violations, falsified records, harassment, and food safety breaches. We've also received formal statements from former employees. She turned to me, including Ms. Emily Rios. Rick looked at me, shocked, like he didn't know I'd be there, that I didn't smile, that I didn't gloat, that I just folded my hands in my lap and met his stare evenly. And for the first time in the 12 years I had known him, Rick Holloway looked scared. The hearing was held behind closed doors, but word spreads fast in a town like mine, especially when it's about a man like Rick Holloway losing everything he thought he could never be touched for. By the time I walked out of the corporate office that afternoon, the winds had already shifted. Rick had been dismissed from the room after 2 tense hours of questions, rebuttals, and document reviews. They let me stay. I listened as board members read my statement aloud, compared it to others, and stacked violations like bricks in a wall no one could tear down. Health violations, labor law breaches, manipulation of time cards, abuse of underage workers, tampering with expiration labels, threatening retaliation for whistleblowing. The file on Rick's franchise was thicker than a phone book. When they handed down their decision, they didn't yell. They didn't gloat. They simply said, effective immediately, Burger Stack Corporate is terminating the Southgate franchise agreement held by Mr. Rick Holloway due to sustained and willful violation of operational and ethical standards. It was clinical, precise, final. Rick wasn't in the room when it was announced, but I could imagine what his face looked like when they told him. Maybe he shouted. Maybe he tried to blame it all on teenagers or labor shortages. Maybe he said it was a vendetta from a disgruntled employee. None of it mattered anymore. He was done. Within 48 hours, the sign outside the Southgate location was taken down. The drive-through menu boards were blacked out. Paper signs were taped to the windows, closed for rebranding. It wasn't a rebrand. It was a purge. They brought in a new team, led by a clean-cut man in his early 40s named Julian. He was from corporate and had been assigned to take over the location temporarily. He didn't try to be charming. He just showed up and got to work. Julian rehired half the former crew, those who had either quit or been fired by Rick for being difficult. Tina came back. So did Ethan and Maya. Even Sarah, who posted that viral TikTok, got a call. The kids laughed when they saw each other again, but there was something different in their energy now, and more fear, and more pretending things were fine. Julian installed cameras, real ones that actually worked and didn't mysteriously break during inspections. He ordered new uniforms, replaced the expired inventory, and held a training day that lasted 6 hours, longer than Rick's ever did. I didn't go back. I had no reason to, but I heard everything because people talk, and suddenly my name was on everyone's lips. The local paper ran the story the following Sunday, front page, bold headline, franchise fallout. Burger Stack Southgate loses license after internal investigation. Beneath it, a subheading, longtime employees' testimony triggers audit, exposing labor and food safety violations. They didn't use my name. Corporate policy wouldn't allow it. But everyone in town knew. Word gets around that I walked into the grocery store that afternoon and got stopped by Mrs. Keller near the dairy section. You did it, she said, squeezing my arm. You told the truth and didn't let them walk all over you. I smiled, sheepish. I just told what happened. No, you stood up. That's rare, especially around here. 2 aisles over, a teenager I didn't recognize whispered to his friend and pointed at me. I pretended not to notice, but inside I stood a little straighter. The real fallout came for Rick that he tried to save face at first. Posted on his Facebook, after 12 years, I'm stepping away from my Burger Stack location to pursue new ventures. Grateful for the memories. The comments didn't go how he expected. Didn't you just get fired? Heard you were serving expired meat. My sister worked for you. Said you made her cry in the walk-in. Good riddance. Rick deleted the post within 12 hours. Then he deleted the entire account. His name had become a punchline that Pineview, we had to start turning people away during weekend breakfast hours. The influx of former Burger Stack regulars meant longer lines, bigger tips, and customers who smiled when they recognized me. Emily, you're the one who blew the whistle, right? I'd just smile and say, I told the truth. That's all. But the truth, it was finally being heard. A week later, I got a call from Marissa. Emily, I wanted to say thank you. Again, your courage made all the difference. I didn't do it for thanks. I replied, I did it because someone had to. Still, she said, we're opening a mentorship program for former employees interested in franchise operations. We think you'd be a great fit. My breath caught in my throat. Me? A mentor? You already are. I didn't say yes. Not right away, but I didn't say no either. Maddie and I went out for ice cream that Saturday. I didn't check my bank account first. I didn't order the cheapest item on the menu. I didn't pretend to be full so she could finish the rest. We both got sundaes with whipped cream and extra sprinkles that we sat on a bench outside watching kids on scooters sit by as the sun dipped behind the high school roof. Mama, Maddie said, licking her spoon, you're kind of famous now. I laughed. Famous for what? For standing up. That's what Miss Doreen said. I looked at her, 9 years old, messy ponytail, chocolate smudged on her chin, and felt something I hadn't in a long time, pride, not just in surviving, but in becoming someone my daughter could look up to. That night, I opened my drawer and pulled out my old Burger Stack name tag, the one with the fading red letters and peeling corners. I held it in my hand for a long moment before placing it in a small wooden box on my shelf, not out of bitterness, but as proof that I had given everything I could to something that didn't deserve me. And when the time came, I walked away with my head high and my voice louder than it had ever been. By the time February rolled around, Burger Stack Southgate was nearly unrecognizable. New signage, new staff uniforms, fresh coats of paint over the grease-stained walls I had scrubbed for years. Gone were the sticky booths and flickering menu screens. In their place, clean lines, professionalism, a staff that smiled because they wanted to, not because they were told to fake it. The new manager, Julian, reached out and asked if I'd consider consulting during the transition. Even a couple weeks, he said, just to help with training. You know the community. You understand the rhythm of this place. I thanked him for the offer and politely declined that I had nothing left to prove, and I was finally building something for myself. Pineview had quietly promoted me to assistant floor manager. It wasn't flashy. There was no press release or ribbon cutting, just a new name tag and a raise that actually showed up in my paycheck. Doreen called it long overdue. You've earned every cent, she said. And then some. Maddie and I moved out of our 2-room apartment into a small duplex 10 minutes closer to her school. She finally had her own room, and I finally had a kitchen that didn't double as my office. I still made burgers sometimes, but only for Maddie, and always with pride. One Monday morning, while reviewing payroll schedules at the diner counter, I received a brown envelope in the mail and a return address. Just my name written in careful block letters. Inside was a folded newspaper clipping from a National Food Service magazine. Headline, Franchise Failure. The Cost of Cutting Corners. The article featured Rick Holloway by name, detailing how a once successful Burger Stack operator had lost his license after an internal whistleblower brought forth a staggering list of policy violations and ethical failures. There was a quote from a corporate spokesperson. When franchisees forget that their people are the backbone of their business, they lose sight of the brand's values. This was an unfortunate but necessary decision. Unfortunate, necessary. That pretty much summed it up. I folded the article, placed it inside Maddie's old art portfolio, and smiled. Rick had bet that I was invisible. Turns out I was the name corporate couldn't afford to ignore. 2 weeks later, I ran into Tina during a grocery run. She was wearing her new Burger Stack uniform, clean, fitted, and wrinkle-free. Hey, she said, surprised. Emily, they finally gave us health benefits. I blinked. What? Yup. Julian pushed it through. Said corporate-approved part-time packages for high-turnover locations as a pilot program. Southgate's the first. He said, and I quote, Emily's work made this possible. I didn't know what to say, but I felt it, like wind returning to a sail I didn't realize had stilled. They even hung up a plaque in the break room, she added. Says, do right by people. Everything else will follow. Did they put my name on it? No, but we all know who it's about. The biggest surprise came in March. Marissa called again. Emily, we're launching a franchisee mentoring initiative for employees who've shown leadership and integrity under pressure. We want you on the advisory team. I don't have a business degree, I said. You have 12 years of experience and the backbone most people only pretend to have. That's worth more than any degree. I didn't answer right away because for the first time in my adult life, I had options, real ones. That Sunday, Maddie and I were at the park tossing a frisbee when she stopped suddenly and asked, Mama, if you could do anything in the world now, what would it be? I paused. Anything? Anything. I looked at her, this small, brave, wide-eyed girl in her mismatched socks and scuffed sneakers. She had watched me break, then watched me rebuild. And now she was watching me dream. I'd open my own place, I said quietly, a little cafe, family style. good food, good people. Her eyes lit up, like with pancakes and waffles and that grilled cheese you make with the crispy edges. Exactly like that. She grinned. Can I be the cashier? You be my partner. Later that week, I took out a notebook and started sketching ideas. That IT wasn't much, just a name, a list of menu items, a dream too long buried under other people's deadlines. But it was real, and it was mine that I never heard from Rick again. Last I knew, he moved out of state. Rumors said he tried to open a food truck in Phoenix, but no one could confirm if it ever got off the ground. His silence was loud enough that he had underestimated me, and it had cost him everything. That's the thing about people like Rick. They think power lives in the title, the office, the paycheck. But real power is the kind that shows up on time, holds the line when no one else will, and speaks the truth when it would be easier to stay quiet, that I wasn't disposable, that I was the standard. And now I get to build something better. On my terms. Epilogue. It's been 6 months since the hearing. Burger Stack Southgate now has the highest staff retention rate. In the region, Marissa and I still talk. She sends me updates from HQ and sometimes even asks for my feedback on new training materials. Doreen jokes that Pineview won't let me leave without a fight, but I've started saving and planning because one day soon, Maddie and I are going to hang a new sign over a door that belongs to us. And when we do, I'll remember every long shift, every time I was overlooked, every insult disguised as just business. And I'll say, thank you for firing me. Because that was the moment I stopped surviving someone else's dream and started chasing my own.